If you think you know about the KTM 390 Duke, think again, because this bike is always being updated and revolutionized by KTM. So for 2023, KTM has updated this, the 390 Duke, yet again, and here I'm gonna get distracted by those bikes. Let me take you through what's new and different on the 2023/2024 KTM 390 Duke.
All right, guys, 3, 2, 1.
Alright, so the 2024 KTM 390 Duke, the one you see right in front of me here, was updated last year in 2023. Some of the big changes you'll notice is the engine. That's always the heart of a motorcycle, right? For the longest time, the 390 Duke was a 373cc single cylinder. Now it is a true 390. In fact, it's bigger than that. It's almost a 400. It's 398cc. Still a single cylinder with the bigger engine. Also comes a revised transmission. That means there's a new shift drum. Fifth and sixth gears are shorter for to better handle the bigger engine and the more power it makes. Visually, though, you'll see the 390 here is getting more influence from its bigger siblings. The really sculpted sides here. Of course, you have the Predator-looking headlight here that's more aggressive than before. The reasoning behind that goes, KTM realizes that in a lot of markets, the 390 here is the biggest bike in a lot of markets. And so if you're gonna buy this bike and you live in one of those markets, you want a premium motorcycle. If you can't get a 990, if you can't get the 1390 wherever you live, and this is your best option for a KTM Duke, you want a cool bike, and KTM realizes that. For us in the US, we look at it the other way, right? This is almost the smallest in the Duke lineup. The 250 Duke that's going to be introduced really soon is obviously the baby brother to this bike. But nonetheless, this is still going to get the updates from down the line from the bigger bikes, and that's a great thing. I just said the big Predator-looking headlight, the really sculpted and molded and aggressive and adult-looking, mature-looking side sculpture here on the panels, the really cool 5-inch TFT display that's borrowed from the bigger bikes. Visually, it's a new frame. It's a stiffer frame than before, but the big thing here, you'll see that the shock is now moved over to the right side of the bike, which meant they had to move, obviously, the shock mounts from the frame and the swing arm. There's no linkage here, it's the straight mounted shock, but the reason why the shock is moved over here is to make more room for the bigger airbox that's now sitting underneath here. So you might be thinking, if there's a bigger airbox under here, then wouldn't the seat height be higher? That's not actually the case. On the previous 390 Duke, the air intake was underneath the seat/fuel tank here. They've now moved the air intake to the front of the bike, so the shock could move over to the right, the bigger airbox can sit underneath, and the seat is actually just a little bit lower than before. So all good things, right? Especially if this is your entryway into motorcycling. You want to be able to touch the ground. That's a really big deal. And then there's the electronics. For 2023/24, I just mentioned the 5-inch TFT display. There's a track mode now as one of the riding modes on this bike. So there's a track mode screen on here. That's come standard. This bike you see here has some accessories on it. You'll see the Remus slip-on exhaust. There's also an Akrapovic exhaust. That's an option. That's a short, stubby one that only exits right there. And then this particular bike has the optional quick shifter both up and down on a 390. So that's pretty darn cool. A 390 single. Yeah, just cool stuff all the way around. But to complement the rider interface here, beyond just the 5-inch TFT display and the screens that are on it, the buttons, all the touch points on the front here are just more, they're nicer. They feel good. They're more intuitive to the rider. They look premium, which is not something you could always say about small bikes, especially beginner bikes in this class. Backlit switches, so you can see them easier at night if you're trying to figure out how to move, how to change between different screens and whatnot. It's really impressive, the package that KTM has done here as far as bringing more maturity to this bike. Adjustable brake and clutch levers. They've even moved the brake disc to the right side of the bike, where previously it was on the left side of the bike. They've specifically mentioned the right side of the motorcycle looks, more modern, more mature, more styled, and there was a big focus on the right side of the motorcycle, which obviously raises the question, what about the left side of the motorcycle? And looks fine, I guess. It looks kind of bland now that there's no brake disc on the left side. There's no exhaust, obviously, on the left side. It's just a really slim-looking bike from the left-hand side because there's no stuff hanging off like an exhaust. But that's okay. The riding impressions. Well, I'm kind of torn about the 390 Duke because it is a good little bike when ridden on its own, but whenever I've ridden it against some of its competitors, I've always kind of been like, well, these competitor bikes are nicer. This one here, I haven't ridden the new 390s yet, and with the bigger engine, it definitely helps, but you can't get around the fact that you're shifting a lot on these little bikes. And thankfully, this one does have the quick shifter. I did try a few times shifting without it, because if you opt not to get the quick shifter, you'll be using the clutch a lot for shifts. And the clutch pull is really light. The shifting is really easy and slick. There is a slipper clutch on it too, which will definitely help with botched downshifts. But yeah, torque coming off the bottom of the bike, of the engine, singles are known for their torque, and this one, I guess for the class, it's comparable to other bikes in this class. But yeah, there's just no getting around the fact that when you ride something that's a small displacement bike, you're gonna be moving around with that throttle, twisting it a lot, working the clutch, and shifting it a lot. Luckily on this bike, you can actually carry revs pretty darn high for a single cylinder. So maybe I'm just being a little too harsh about it. But you are going to be shifting a lot. The cool thing too about this bike that I forgot to mention earlier, adjustable suspension, both front and rear. The front has compression and rebound and preload adjustability. The rear has preload and rebound adjustability. That's more adjustments than you could have previously done before. And there's tools underneath this seat that you can use to make those changes, and knobs that you can just turn with your fingers on the front. So it's really easy that way to make changes. Of course, with a small entry-level bike like this, lightness is key. Low seat height, lightness, and an easy-to-manage engine. This meets all of those things. I forgot to mention earlier, too, the engine KTM said is lighter. Not that that's really going to matter to a lot of you, but the stiffness of the frame, the rigidity, they said, helps with the handling. Obviously, lightness does, too. And yeah, I got to admit, the 390 Duke changes directions really easy, which can also be a challenge, because I'm not sure if you can notice, but on a day like today, it's really windy, and when we were going through some of the twists and turns and some of these canyon roads here in Spain, we were getting blasted by side winds all the time, and that really affects a bike like this. Yeah, we're being blown around, and you had to adjust your line, or even if you're going in a straight line, you're leaning into the wind to go in a straight line. It handled it just fine. Just something to be aware of. Lighter weight wheels on the new 390 as well. Overall package, I think it looks great. The ride impressions, though, granted, I only did about 70 to 80 miles on the bike today. So it's not totally exemplary of what this bike can do, but my quick first impressions is I do appreciate the uptick in power. I'm just not sure it's enough to compete in this class that now has the Z500 Kawasaki. That's going to be the major competition for this bike, I think, as well as others like the Triumph 400s. It's going to be in the mix for sure. I'm a little hesitant to say where this bike is going to land right now. That being said, ridden on its own, it's a lot of fun. And I think of the bikes in this class, this one does look the best in my opinion. So if you think you're looking at a bike in this class, say the Z500 Kawasaki, say those new Triumph 400s, or this KTM 390 Duke, a lot of bike purchase decisions these days comes down to which bike do you think looks the best. And me personally, this KTM definitely looks the best. You get some premium options, you get adjustable suspension, you have the option to get a quick shifter in both directions. You have now the track mode on this thing, supermoto mode if you want to back it in a little bit. So KTM knows how to have fun with their bikes, and for sure this new 390 Duke will allow you to have a lot of fun. You might notice some hesitation in my presentation here, but again, that's because the competition is really good. But I think this one could have the advantage nowadays. Good, solid little package that if you're looking to get started in motorcycling, this is going to be a great way to start off. So that's it. Those are my quick impressions of the 2024 KTM 390 Duke that was just recently updated last year in 2023. If you have questions about it, leave a comment below. I'll try and get to those. And remember, this is just my quick brain download summary of this bike. You got to go to the written review over at Motorcycle.com for a more thorough explanation and evaluation of this bike. There'll be a whole lot more pictures. Like I said, more words, more explanations, and more things to cover about the 390 Duke. So, thanks everyone for watching. Leave a comment below if you like it or not, or have a question. And let me know what you think about this bike. And until then, ride safe, and I'll talk to you later.